Hi, this is Leland Chee, creative executive at Lucasfilm, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
The continued and inexplicable Gorman resistance to imperial norms. Many people, even some Gormans, have already been asking how long the Empire's patience can be tested, and here we are this morning with rumours of a general strike.
Orders, please. Supervisor Miro.
Proceed.
Wait! One last favor.
This is Vanessa Marshall, Harrison Dula from Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to Coffee with Kenobi, or if you are new to the show, welcome. It's great to have you in the cafe with us. We are going to talk about the second season of Andor. Most shows have gone and done all the arcs, but we went through these individually just because they're so rich, and they don't come much more poignant, much more powerful than the 8th episode in season 2. The episode is titled, Who Are You? Now, this gentleman we have, this guest, no one's going to say, who are you? We all know this guy. It's been a while. Mr. Tom Gross. Tom, welcome back to Coffee with Kenobi.
Hello. It's great to be back on Coffee with Kenobi. I like how you say in the cafe here. Yes, indeed. In the cafe. And boy, Andor episode 8. When you asked me early on, you said if you could choose which episode you did. This is the one I said. So I was thrilled when you asked me to do this one, because I think there's a lot to talk about in this one, as they all are, but this one, especially.
I could not agree more. And I remember that conversation. We were at school in your library, and I asked you that, and you said, I think this episode. And so I thought of that, and it's been kept away in my files, ready to go. Let's just jump into it. As you said, it's a very, very rich episode. Give me one word and overall reactions to Who Are You?
So my one word, I think, is both for myself as well as the show, and is some things in the show, and that is stunned. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to put on the end of that word, if it was stunned or stunning, but I think I'm going to go with stunned on this one. My reaction was just that, as a matter of fact. When this episode started to the very last moment of this episode, I did not sit back. This episode, for lots of reasons that I know we'll get into, kept us on the edge of our seats from the beginning to the end. And I think it was for different reasons. You know, there's the anticipation and the anxiety of what had been brewing for so long, then to the incident and then the aftermath that this whole episode covers. So I think that's a good start for my reaction to this.
It is a good start. This was one where I was trying to find synonyms for this, but then it just kind of hit me a little bit ago. My word for this, first I'll read the definition, because I want to know the exact definition. I know what the word means, but I want to see how it was described. The definition is better or more than all others of the same kind, to the highest degree or best of all. That word is par excellence. This, to me, is the greatest individual episode of Star Wars in the history of any series of Star Wars. I would put this hour of Star Wars perhaps above anything ever made in the world of Star Wars. And in fact, I'll take it a step further. If you take like the top 10 individual episodes of all series of all time of any genre, I would say this is a top 10 in the history of television shows of all time. Sure. This is excellent. This is par excellence. I've seen it a couple times. Every time, even when I know what's going to happen, I get goosebumps. I get choked up. The suspense is overwhelming. In fact, I thought if this were underwater, Tom wouldn't make it. Because I feel like I held my breath the whole time. I'm serious. I kept waiting to exhale to find relief. But that is why this is a masterpiece. And of all the individual episodes, this is the only one that got some Emmy consideration as far as breaking down individual episodes. We'll certainly probably talk about the Emmy thing later. I think that Genevieve O'Reilly and Diego Luna and many others absolutely deserved Emmy nominations. And the fact that they didn't is the opposite of par excellence. It was very disappointing. But I am happy to see that this series got nominated for Best Drama Series, and it should. And Who Are You is the ultimate reason why. In fact, I don't want to know yet, but I'm just going to put out. Well, no, I'll save it. I will save it. Where do you want to start on this thing? Where do you want to
let's start with that. Let's start with that not being able to sit still. When this episode gets started, I started taking notes of like every little thing that was happening, and I have like 4 pages because it doesn't settle down on anything. It is a rapid escalation, which to me symbolizes all of the events in this episode. There are no breaks. Things happen very quickly, and it's hard to follow the development because we're popping from one character to another character to a handoff here and a march here, and so much is happening that I feel like is exactly what they wanted us to feel, because this is just how the Empire drew this whole thing up for nobody to be able to stop and think. We had one character who was able to see clearly what was happening, and it wasn't Cassian Andor, although I don't know that he was falling into the river of it either. But there was only one character that saw what was happening, and he essentially gets trampled on the march to the square. So I'm kind of curious how you felt during that whole opening scene when we go from, Cassian assembling his rifle to the Empire moving the barriers, to the Gorman underground mobilizing, then Daedra reporting mining equipment, then a media posts that we are hearing in the background, to Gorman resistance marching through the city square. And that's where it gets to the point where, is it Rylands? He's sort of the patriarch of the resistance, or the he is trying to stop people because he says it's a trap, and no one wants to listen to him.
Wow. You've packed a lot in there, and because this episode packs a lot, I think one of the first things when I start dealing with the barriers, and you see the Imperial who's in charge of this whole thing. Well, it's sort of hard to tell who's in charge of this thing, but what is that guy's name?
Yeah, I think he's a lieutenant.
Yeah. Sergeant Bloy is the one who's in charge of
the troops that are
those
down.
poor troopers that are basically being put out to be served up and help start this murder fest.
This guy you're talking about has some marvelous lines throughout this episode, but he is stone cold.
He's a sociopath. I mean, he even kind of enjoys seeing people get killed. Really. I'm looking for his name, but these Imperial security troopers who are there have to go out into the massive courtyard, and basically the Empire, this is their master stroke. They're going to set everybody up so that they can say, no, the Gormans attacked us, we're defending ourselves, to try to basically excuse their massive genocide, because they know that they're going to get away with it because they control information, right? I can't find the guy's name anywhere, but everybody knows who we're talking about, I would think. But that's the part that alarms me, is that they want Sergeant Bloy is forced to put these men who he says are green, and he said in the last episode that they were not ready for something like this.
Right.
They're essentially fresh recruits. And I thought, oh my gosh, they don't care that these men are going to be killed. And we see later this sniper is tasked with murdering one of the own Imperials to help get everything started. Now, one of the Gore throws a rock first, but a rock compared to a sniper that shoots somebody, I think, in the head, by the way. And the fact that the Empire does not care, more specifically, the Emperor does not care who is hurt, even if it's people that are helping to enforce his, despotic rule across the galaxy, because he wants whatever is in that Earth, which we know, of course, is the Kyber crystals. And if you pull the camera back a little bit, it makes Rogue One and all the sacrifice, and it makes what happens with Luke just so much more meaningful to me, because this stuff is all set up to create the Death Star. This is the Empire's ultimate stroke. We see even more how many people are killed or murdered or framed or set up to be decimated and destroyed for his weapon. And the fact that Luke is able to ultimately destroy it just gives A New Hope more gravitas. But I also want to be clear, and I've said this many times throughout our discussions of Andor seasons 1 and 2. The tone of A New Hope is not even in the same ballpark as a tone in an Andor. Andor is so much more adult, so much more mature, so much more prevalent when it comes to showing cost, real cost. A New Hope is fun in a mythological, almost a fantasy. This is not. The only thing that's fantastical about this is when those murder droids show up and they start it comes right out of a horror show. They're called KX droids. They're frightening. It's like something from Alien or something like that. I don't know. There's a lot of we're jumping around, but it's hard not to be a little bit just befuddled about where to start, because it's just so intense.
100%. And to the point you're making is, when I watched this, actually it was kind of as it was wrapping up, and it's when he's in the hover pickup or whatever truck that is that he's driving, and he's listening, and he's getting, and we see Cassian just kind of cracking.
He cries. He has a tear roll down his face. That moved me. And that got me choked up.
And that whole moment, you're like, this is where he's making the decision. He is going to become a rebel, and he's going to become the best darn rebel out there. But when he's driving through that, listening to that radio broadcast, all I could think was Lothal, the planet in A New Dawn.
I know what you mean.
Now all the planets that I was thinking about are escaping my mind, but every planet that had the Empire there for some particular reason, most of them because of resources that they had. Jeddah is another good example. But I'm thinking about in A New Dawn. They literally tear that moon apart because they stole so much resources from that moon that the moon literally comes apart. And I can only picture that that's what's going to happen here. So I think the reason it's so hard for me to kind of find a point to dig in and really start talking is because of the nature of the episode. It's just so loaded with little pieces here and there that come together that make such a big point at the end. You mind if I try diving into another spot?
Yes. Before you do, I want to talk about that Cassian moment when they show him. I guess two things on Cassian. One, why does he take so long to take action when all these Gorman are being massacred? Why does he just? I mean, maybe it's as simple as he's focused on Daedra and executing her because that is the mission that Luthen has given him. Maybe he's just in shock and overwhelmed, and for him to be overwhelmed with everything he's seen shows how intense it is, even for a veteran like himself. Combined with the fact that when he cries, like a tear goes down as he's overwhelmed by this emotion, and Wilman's girlfriend saying over and over again on the radio, people have to know what has happened. Cassian is as tough as they come. Like, he's eating nails for breakfast, right? He doesn't even need anything to drink. Like, he's that tough. He's that tough. And for him to get impacted by that, it gave me goosebumps then. It's giving me goosebumps now. This is so heavy, the ramifications and the fact that we are feeling what he is feeling. And as overwhelmed as he is, that says a lot, because, again, of the toughness, of the resilience of this character. And for everything that's happened to him, death of his mother, loss of friends, loss of his world, everything. This was, as you said, this was the last straw.
Yeah. You know what? If you don't mind, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to stay on where you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because let's talk about that radio plea, that voice of Gorman radio monologue that happens at the end of this. This is after the massacre in, I keep calling it the square. I think they refer to it more as a plaza.
Yeah.
But it's a central location that's important, because there's a memorial there. It's also just outside of the Imperial building. It's a marketplace. It means all sorts of things to the Gormans. And so this, after the massacre, it's kind of winding down, but people are still being chased through the city by the KX droids, by Imperial stormtroopers. She comes on, and I won't read the whole thing, but she says, "We are under siege. We are being slaughtered. The Imperial murder of Gorman has begun." There's someplace else that I wanted to pull out of that. If you believe in truth, if you have any faith left in truth, please mark this passage and pass it forward. Mark this message and pass it forward. This is murder. The Empire built this fire. They made this fire and led us to the slaughter. The conspiracy we feared is here today. So you're a literary person. Mm-hmm. I studied literature and persuasive speaking and speech making. And I wanted to talk about this in the context of the entire series, for that matter, up to this point where we are, because the more things like this happen later. And I want to talk about the power of the monologue.
Please.
When I wrote this, and then I discovered that somebody on StarWars.com had already written about the monologue in Andor. But here's what I have to say. The power of the monologue. Here's a few that we've experienced up to this point in the series. Marva in Ferrix, Luthen and his monologue of sacrifice, which left us all stunned and in goosebumps. Nemec and his manifesto that is read during a montage of hard feelings. Kino Loy's message of one way out and freedom. These monologues, and again, Dan, I'll come to you to fill in the cracks here, but these monologues draw upon the pathos, logos, and ethos to confirm, to inspire, to define larger ideas, such as what is sacrifice, what is freedom, what is rebellion, what is truth. And the genius of this show, and the genius of using these monologues in this format of visual media, to me, is the storytelling that we see, the response and the clips of characters as they listen to, or as they are impacted by the words of these monologues. And the characters are moving forward, or they're in fear, or they're taking action, or they're just impacted by the message itself. Oh, this is an amazing piece of writing throughout the entire, but here in this episode, the radio call reminds me of Ezra getting onto the when they raid the tower and they put the call out from Lothal. This is right there with that, and it's so powerful that I don't know how anyone can listen to this and not feel the passion, the pain, and in certain ways
importance.
become inspired by this. Yes.
Absolutely. And especially because you have a background in broadcasting and radio, and you're also a pretty dynamic speech coach. I'm glad that you brought that up. You're the right person to bring that up. I think the thing that I like about this, as well as the other speeches you've mentioned, not to mention Mon Mothma's in the next episode, and what her speech in Rebels as well, is that these are ways to make a very dynamic, important point as a writer of this episode or a director of this episode without being didactic. It doesn't feel preachy. It feels like essential. It feels necessary. It can't be cleansing because you just feel nothing but dirty and empty inside. But it is a way for us as an audience to kind of get some sort of a very brief release, because this is what we are feeling. What they are saying in such a dynamic way is how we are feeling. This, everyone has to know about this. You know, we yearn for justice here, for the rebels, for the citizens of Gore, or the Gore people, for ourselves, because we witness these terrible atrocities. And it calls it to light, and it's almost like, it's not a tribute, but it's like speaking at the grave. She, in that moment, is speaking at the grave of the Gorman people and the individual freedom and their liberties. And then at the end, that media thing that Edie hears, knowing that her son is dead, getting a feeling that she believes her son is dead. And the way they even spun it, I found myself thinking again and again, are they trying to be Imperial sympathizers? Are they trying to empathize with the Gorman people? But no, they're not. They're taking this tragedy where the Empire murdered all these people for selfish reasons. With no attempts to negotiate or pay them for the minerals in the earth or anything like that. No. We're going to kill these people. We're going to kill our own to do it. And we're just going to take what we want. That's so scary. It just really is hitting me now even more so. And it just speaks to the impact of this episode.
Yeah. 100%. And the media spin in this that they use goes clear back to Krennic's plan at the beginning of the season.
Yep. Where
they're going to spin all of this. But let me talk a little bit about the Empire, and go back to a character we know well, Deidre. And the gentleman, the officer that we were talking about earlier, I don't remember his name. Black uniform, black cap, very cold. But this little passage I want to talk about is if you don't know who we're talking about, you will after this.
Does he say I'm the trigger, you're the finger? Is that what he says?
That's the part I'm going to talk about. Yes. He says everything as you wanted, and he turns to her and he says, "What I want is a comfortable ride home."
Yeah.
And then after a little bit more discourse, he says, "Look, let's remember our hierarchy of orders here. I am the trigger. You are the finger. Do not go anywhere. Don't you disappear on me." I don't know. So this is what draws me to this, because it does actually a nice job coming from where we just talked about at the end of the episode, because he says the comfortable ride home, and it makes me think of Andor driving away in a not comfortable, a very sick feeling in it, and he's going away on, and what it makes me think of is it's just another day at the office for the Empire. This is not like a moment. This is not a grand stand for the Empire. This is just another day. This is the lives of the people of the Gorman, but this is just another day to these, destroying lives versus maintaining power and comfort. Flies me back to a conversation that happens in Revenge of the Sith between, this guy named the Emperor and this new guy named Darth Vader. And the lieutenant just wants a comfortable ride home. And the Emperor says, "We will have peace." This is their peace. This is their peace. And it just, when you start sewing it all together, this is a magnificent quilted story that has so many links. You can watch one story of it and think it's amazing, or you can take all of them. People like you and I, Dan, we know all the stories, and we start piecing it together, and it starts making this tragic story that sometimes is a little too much like life. But here in film and literature, it's so well pieced together that it's just as you said, it's very scary.
And when he says, "I want a comfortable ride home," it's really rare. I think if you go through the history of the show, it's pretty rare for me to say something like this. But when I heard that, I hated that guy.
Yes,
not the actor, of course, the character. I hated that character, hated them. And I'm not someone who feels that way about anything, real or imagined. But he did. He was just he could have been eating a sandwich, watching all this death, his own people and the Gorman people, and seeing them murdered and killed, and frightened. They were they treat them like rats. They treated the Gorman people like rats, and they're running frightened for their lives, horrified. Then these monstrous droids come in, throw them around like they're just rodents to be discarded or killed. Who cares how they feel? And he doesn't care. That is so evil. That is one of the most evil things I think I've heard in Star Wars. It really is. And I keep feeling like I'm being hyperbolic, but I don't know. I think I could defend it because it's all there. It's all there in front of you.
There's the one officer in The Mandalorian when it's the first time the Mandalorian takes his helmet off. And do you know who I'm talking about? I can't think of his name.
I wrote.
He's despicable. Yeah. He's despicable like this guy is. And it just is, it's just ugly.
Oh, when he talks about Operation Cinder.
Cinder, yes. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Yeah.
But anyway, he very much reminds me of him. And the things that you're saying about this person, there's so many cuts during the massacre where they go and they show him standing behind the bulletproof, the laser-proof glass, watching it like it's a tennis match or something. Mm-hmm. And he's the one that calls the sniper to shoot their own person.
Fire at will.
To incite it all.
Mm-hmm.
Good heavens.
It's true.
Good heavens.
Let's talk about another casualty of this, and I think this is the most personal. And after watching this again, I never thought it was this, but I think Syril Karn is the most complicated character in Andor in either season. He really is. The moment when he goes and he confronts Daedra, how long have you known about this? His rage it's like everything he's ever felt is unleashed. He is so betrayed by this woman who he knew. He replaced his mother with her. They're both overpowering and controlling. But in this moment, he screams, he chokes her. He insists on knowing what's happening. And she starts to give the company spiel about, no, that's a rumor. There's no outside digging. He's like, no, I will throw you out this window if you say that. And then when he leaves her, she says, we can be together. And when he leaves her and she breaks down, I mean, this is a woman raised in an imperial, essentially an orphanage, probably raised by droids. I think they've said that. Not someone who has a lot of compassion or any compassion or empathy. She's almost robotic in her own way, all the way up to how her bun is tied tightly in her head. When she's in that soundproof room where she used to communicate with Partagaz and with Syril when they're doing their communication moments, she lets go. Her right hand starts twitching, almost like a nervous thing. She's having a little breakdown herself. And to fix it, she kind of straightens up. She tries to straighten up, get control, present herself, but she can't be. She is on Stars.com. They say that seeing the massacre affects her. I don't know. I mean, I think so, but not as much as it affects Syril. I think she feels in that moment what she has done to him, how she has betrayed him. combined with what is happening and what she's helped. I mean, she didn't want to give the order to open, proceed. I think all she says is proceed. And it's these two people's lives are ruined. Syril ends up getting, we'll talk about the fight with Cassian here in a little bit, but it just that deeply affected me because my heart broke for him. Almost like he was symbolic of the cruelty and how people in the galaxy think they're fighting for something good, that the Empire is righteous or just. And it's like everything is crashing in front of him. Everything he believed in, everything he fought for completely falls apart. Also parlayed with the complete betrayal of his wife. Assuming they're married. Yeah. If not,
so well spoken.
Yeah.
Yeah, so well spoken, and I couldn't agree with you more. He is so complicated to the point where sometimes I'm not sure who he is, and I wonder sometimes, I feel like so much of this whole Andor season 1 and 2, Syril feels that he knows exactly who he is and what he is. He is there. He is alive to do. He is so persistent. But here at the very end, I don't know that he really knew. I mean, you have that moment when you mentioned he's standing in the middle of the square and people are dropping all around him. They go to a slow motion as he turns and you can see like laser fire, slow motion going across. And it's like such a whirlwind. Yeah, and back to the moment with him confronting Dedra, which I always think it's funny. Cardigas calls her Dedra. But anyway, that I always have a hard time saying her name because of that. But he becomes physical, and it reminds me of a child. When a child has like a childlike rage, sometimes they will grab their stuffed animals and just throttle their stuffed animals out of just a rage that they don't really understand what's happening, and then it passes. That's exactly what I felt Syril was going through in that moment, except it wasn't a child rage. This was a real adult rage, and he grabs Dedra like a stuffed animal and grabs her around the neck, and she defends it by saying, whether it's us or not, it's happening. But we will be going home as heroes. Can you imagine? Like she believes that and they probably will. I mean, she's not making this up, but the fact that they believe and that they probably will go back to Coruscant as heroes of the Empire.
And don't you agree that when she says that, you get the sense she doesn't believe what she's saying? Like she doesn't feel like a hero. Like she may believe that that's true, but she doesn't feel like one.
100%. Yes. She's saying what she believes to be true,
and
but she's not saying what she wants it to be true. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's such it is really an amazing piece. And I really kind of thought that when we saw her in that like reporting room, that might be it. Like that might have been the last time that we see her. But as we may know, if you're watching while you're listening to this, you won't know, so I won't say, but it's not the last time we see Dedra.
And I might talk about this later, but I kind of wish it was. But I'll talk about that in a future episode.
I kind of wish it was too, because I think after this episode, I think I said to you at school that I like.
Oh yeah, you asked me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do we see? Because you had seen someone, and I said, is this the last time we see her? Because I really kind of felt like that would have been a nice. Okay, not nice. It would have been an appropriate ending to her story.
Completely.
Let's jump to. Sorry, I'm.
No, please.
Mutiny on Coffee with Kenobi.
No. You're the co-host.
Well, you mentioned the fight between Cassian and Syril.
Yeah.
Had we been waiting for that to happen? I really honestly didn't know if they would ever cross paths. So I was kind of surprised when this happened.
Yeah. I have a lot to say, but
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, to me, this is the Godzilla moment. In Godzilla -1, there's this moment where I don't know if someone says it or if I just talked about it on Pour-Over, on CWK Pour-Over, which of course I hope you all join as a member of the CWK Alliance. Godzilla destroys property, he destroys communities, he destroys lives, and he just does it. The people know it. Godzilla has no idea who these people are. Godzilla's just being Godzilla. In this moment, when he says, "Who are you?" It's such an important line that they make it the title of the episode. Cassian has no idea who this guy is. This guy and Daedra have been obsessing over him since we met them in the first 5 minutes of season 1 of Andor, the first episode. He has no idea who they are. Syril unleashes his rage, his anger, his frustration, his betrayal, his intense pain on this guy, and he pummels Cassian. Finally, Cassian fights back and equally pummels him. And then, ironically, he ends up getting killed by the peace-loving man who didn't want them to fight. Yeah. And it's Rylance. Yeah. Rylance. He's the one who ends up killing, and he saves Cassian's life because most likely Syril, it's possible Syril was going to shoot him, but he kind of puts his weapon down briefly when he says, "Who are you?" And I would like to think, it makes it more tragic, but I would like to think that Cyril's like, "Oh, wait, maybe this guy is being misled like I am." And it's sort of like, what a waste. I mean, in a different world, in a different reality, could these two have have they gotten along? I don't know. Cyril's very different. He's very by the book, and they probably would have butted heads regardless, but it wouldn't have been with fists. So it sticks with you because the great irony is all this hate and rage and all this focus he's had obsessing over this guy. Is this guy a part? Did he commit murder in that first episode? Yeah. Do you know his whole story? No. And there's just so much more to it. That's why, again, as I keep babbling and saying, this is such a rich series because it's not black and white. It's so convoluted and so steeped in humanity of humans.
Yes, exactly. The fight that you described was right on target. It reminded me of a level episode. They just really beat each other up to where barely both of them could stand. But to the point you're talking about where Syril has him and he starts to lower the weapon before he is shot, he being Syril is shot, I felt like he wanted to tell him the story. Like I feel like he just wanted to say, I've been chasing you across this galaxy, and I hadn't thought of the angle that you were talking about. Like, does he wonder if he's been manipulated like he has? Like, does he want to tell the story to find out? Does he want to learn who is this Cassian Andor that I've been chasing so blindlessly? And now I have him and he doesn't know who I am. I think that there was so much there. And like you said, it's a tragic ending to a complex character that has just confounded me the entire series. But I wanted to know more about him, and we don't. We won't. There won't be an action figure of Syril because there's no heroic ending.
No, and he is a character that I continue to just marvel over, to be moved by, because his pain, his tragedy is just so impactful to me, because he has been misled and used, and he's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of talent and passion and ability to get things done, and it's all been wasted for the wrong reasons. I find that frightening. That's frightening.
And just I'm so like his mother. Like, my gosh.
Edie,
They
who's
just kept,
super annoying, and then you suddenly like, oh my gosh, I feel terrible for this woman.
she's endearing in some, she's endearing to the audience. I mean,
In that moment, only in that moment. To me.
I mean,
but it's really
I feel for. I mean, I don't have a mother-in-law, or my mom is nothing like this woman, but I feel for him as a son, or for him as a son when she comes over to Deidre's apartment and they're having dinner, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, she's saying like all the wrong things, like just like like a mother should, or whatever. But only continued to add layers of, as you've said, humanity to that character, and you do feel just kind of dreadful for her at the very end when this episode concludes.
And isn't that the beauty of it too, that we can feel that deeply for Edie when she's been a thorn in our sides, and especially in her son's side, because again, these are human beings. They're not issues. They're not whatever. They're humans, and these Gorman people are being destroyed for reasons they don't even know, and set up to think that they like. And the entire time, the only person who believes Akaro is the only one who believes that peace is the only way. But his daughter Enza, part of this whole thing, working with everybody, she tries to toe the company line with her dad, and I think she believes in that. But she's younger, and she's a bit impetuous or impulsive. But when she's tossed by that droid through the air, just carelessly, casually, and she's murdered, it's just like, even now, like I feel like I'm getting upset. Like, this is just horrible. It's pretend, it's fake, but the emotions aren't. But the impact isn't. And it just. When Tony Gilroy set out to make Andor, he was always wanted to make some sort of historical episode, and he ends up taking a combination of world history events and combining them into this, and it completely overpowers you in the best ways that stories can move us.
So, can we talk about the Gormans for a second, because you have two factions of Gormans here. You have the innocent public who is fed up. That's the majority of the people marching to the plaza.
Right.
Then you have the rebels, and I don't know, when I say rebels, I don't that I mean,
you can say
like
insurgents,
Luke Skywalker rebels, just insurgents,
the
or
people,
just local rebels. And they've got, and they know, and they have information, they have intel, and they know what's happening, they know what they need to do, and all this kind of thing. But there's a thing that they do is they're marching to the plaza, and they are chanting this catchy little chant: "We are Gore, the galaxy is watching." We are Gore, and a horn is blowing, and it's really powerful. They get to the plaza, and I don't know. I want to hear what your take is on this, but I feel like, and other stories that we've read about people being oppressed by the Empire. They continually think everybody knows someone will come to save us. This is actually historical. How many times in history has someone who's being oppressed said, surely someone will come. Someone will. Well,
Ben Franklin went over to France for a long time to try to recruit the French to help the colonials.
Yes. And so they're chanting this, and they get to the plaza, and then it changes. They one man starts singing what I think is the national anthem.
It's like
it's
a
beautiful song.
It is lovely.
And then so it kind of goes through the entire crowd, and then you have everybody singing the national anthem. And to me,
Lazine is his name. Lazine, Lezine.
Okay. Yeah. And I love these guys with their hats, and how they, during this scene, they take their hats off and they're holding them in their hands. I don't know if that symbolizes anything, but it feels like so real. I don't know. It's such a real emotion
Respect,
to take your hat off. It's a respect thing. Exactly. And so they changed from the galaxy is watching to their national anthem. That makes me feel like they realize that the galaxy isn't here to save them, and the only people that are here to save them is themselves. And so they turn to this national anthem, to their own loyalties, and that really gets, the emotional, like they're angry with the galaxy is watching, but then it becomes emotional when they start singing their national anthem that talks about their land, which is, the mining equipment is landing as they sing, and they talk about the land, and they talk about them as a people and hardworking people that they are. Oh, all of this right before the storm hits. I don't know. What is your thought on the switch from a chant that the galaxy is watching to something that is more emotionally tied directly to them?
Well, it's an attempt at patriotism and unification. Instead of yelling about what they don't like that is happening, they remind themselves of what they do like about themselves as people. And Lazine, who when we first meet is shown to be an instigator and the one that is more interested in brute force and aggression, he's the one who starts this. Now, does he want it to lead to everybody calming down? I think he kind of does. I also think he feels this incredible pride. He says repeatedly throughout this season, "We are the Gore. We are the Gore." He loves his people. He loves his land. And he wants to remind everyone of that. And then, of course, things go to hell, absolute hell. And because I was going to ask you, why do you think that Lazine starts it? But I just sort of answered my own question. He just feels pride and wants to be a source of reminding who they are, because they're losing themselves in this. Father is and daughter are fighting. People are fighting against each other. It's like it's not a civil war, but they're certainly not on the same page. And it's this brief moment the Gore people get a chance to just be beautiful and be happy. And the singing might have stopped it. But then, it doesn't. And then rock is thrown, and then this sniper starts sacrificing his own Imperial to make people think that the Gore attacked first, that they shot first. And they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't. Let's see. What else do you think? Because I think we've hit the most important parts. I feel terrible for Carl. We don't see him die. We see him heartbroken, devastated. When he confronts Syril, in that moment, he still thinks Syril is the cog in this that set them all up, that made them look like fools. He says, "You, what kind of person, what kind of creature, what kind of individual are you to do this, to still continue to lie?" And Syril, I won't say he's a slow learner, but I will say his whole life he's, again, been raised to believe the Empire is good and just. And he thought he was doing something trying to figure out who the outside rebels were. I just thought this, he probably thinks he's going to catch Cassian. He probably thinks he's going to catch Luthen, who they don't call Luthen because they don't have a name yet. He probably thinks this is maybe my connection to finding who activates all this insurgency, because they kept saying, we're looking for outside rebel interference. That is what Syril is trying to investigate and draw out. That's what he thinks Daedra has tasked him with. But it's not true. And he's, again, slowly realizing all of it. And then we see what happens.
Yeah. I think part of the emotion of this is that I know we've mentioned it, but just to be poignant on it, is that it didn't matter what the Gormans did in this situation. It was going to end the way it did, because the Empire was in complete control from the start to the end. In fact, when I talk about the how this episode just keeps moving and it shifts and it never settles in. We can never sit back in our chairs and like watch and really process because it moves so fast. The only of this entire episode to me that you could possibly do that are when you are in with the Imperial officers. Mm-hmm. That's the only calm moments where no one's hysterical, no one is emotionally charged. They're very calm. Even when they strike terror, when the stormtroopers come down the steps of the South Gate,
yeah,
that is the most fearsome
they've ever looked
moment of
stormtroopers
that I think I've ever sensed.
Yes.
I felt like people are dying today because of those stormtroopers. And we can make all the jokes we want to about their aim. It's not going to be a problem today for them.
Agreed.
And just
and the fact that they're faceless and they're wearing masks and they're just coldly with those permanent frowns on their faces, just there to scare the heck out of people. And you hear their screams of terror, and it feels like you're watching a real historical documentary at that moment. And then you combine with first one TIE flies over and then 4 fly over. It's like they're flexing their muscles, showing they're like a snake ready to strike.
Yeah. I'm looking to see if there's anything else I wanted to. I'm
ready to give a letter grade, but I'm certainly happy to talk about anything else that you think we haven't covered.
The only other thing, and I think you mentioned it, was at the very end when we watched those news reports. They go to 2 or 3 different news reports, and it's just very frustrating to watch those because they're one of 2 things are happening here, and I think I know which one it is. It's either the news only sees one perspective, or they're being completely fed.
Propaganda.
Sorry, I'm looking for a note. I had a note on this, but I'm struggling to find it. But they are, the Empire has manipulated this. Here it is. I noted to myself that this is more than just from a certain point of view. The news programs that they're all the news moments they show in the plaza. They show 2 different news people talking about the insurgents, Empire being baited, and all this kind of thing. And then at the end, and this is not news from a certain point of view. These are made up stories based on a certain point of view that I call lies.
Yes.
And the Empire has completely manipulated this, and we know this going clear back to Krennic in the opening episode of this whole season. It's been a genius plan
from the beginning. A seemingly innocuous conversation at the beginning ends up being a pivotal moment. Again, this is one of the reasons I love this series is there's no wasted beats. You know what I mean? There's no wasted narrative beats. It's all purposeful. It's all completely purposeful.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is
Well, it's Valen Hess, by the way. Valen Hess, by the way, is the Imperial in The Mandalorian that is so despicable. Okay, buddy. Thank goodness I have you to bounce us off, because this is a heavy episode, and I knew you'd bring some light, much needed light, to this conversation. What is your letter grade on Who Are You?
For this episode, it is an A+. There wasn't a moment that I wasn't drawn in and tied into this story personally, as well as a fan of the franchise of Star Wars. It's a magnificent piece of work.
This is what I was going to say at the beginning. If anyone, no one could convince me this is not an A+. If this isn't an A+, then you have a rubric that I don't want, because this is perfection. This is the most impactful, emotional, devastating. Like I said, if I had to pick the 10 best individual episodes in the history of television, streaming, and all the way back to the opening ever television, back to Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, all that, this would be in there. This will be in there, and it is the best individual hour of narrative Star Wars storytelling. You know, the last episode in season 2 of The Mandalorian, when Luke shows up, that's my favorite. It's incredible. It's genius in a very, very different way. But this is the best. Acting, the performance, the script, and none of it has that power and impact without the lead up of the first, 7 episodes and season 1 of Andor, plus the history of Star Wars itself. This is another bar of another bar.
Yeah. And again, just repeating what you said early on is, all of this season of Andor and the season before that lead up to Rogue One only bring a certain richness to now the original trilogy. The cost that goes into this, when they say that, the plans were this or that for the original Death Star, we know now. We know that people died. We know how these plans are developed and everything, and how the rebellion begins is an amazing story, and this is it.
Yes.
So, yeah, I just this episode was such a turning point for me. Not because I wasn't believing in anything, but it really defined what this is all about.
And this is another reason, as I said again many, many times, why we should have had one episode a week, because this would have sustained the internet for a week easily. Easily.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, it's been such a delight to have you back on the show. You've been very busy this summer. I am one of the reasons I'm looking forward to getting back to school is being able to see you more regularly. But please tell us about what's going on with Teachers in the Dungeon.
Yeah, so we just finished our summer camp, our RPG summer camp, where we bring kids in the summer and for 4 days, and we teach them RPG skills in the morning, and then they get to play a consecutive game throughout the week. It was our largest group that we've ever had, of 37 students. It was the first time we brought in incoming freshmen, so we had ages approximately 14 to 18 here this year. And we had students from other schools that had come to the camp this year, and it was an amazing piece to watch all of these kids, some that knew each other, some didn't know anybody, and they all were friends before the first day was done. They were talking to each other, they were playing games with each other, they were learning together in different sessions and things like that. And that is, to me, the joy of it all. But the other component is we bring alumni back to run the games for our current students in the afternoon. And we had two new dungeon masters this year one was a student graduate, or they were both graduated last year. And it was just so much fun to watch them as dungeon masters after a year of college, and just see how they changed, and the new expression, and just a little bit more mature than they were a year ago. I mean, they were sitting in the camp a year ago.
Right. Amazing. And you have an actual episode where you talk all about that, which I highly, highly recommend.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate that. And yeah, Teachers in the Dungeon, you can catch us on the podcast, same kind of podcast feed you can catch Coffee with Kenobi in.
How about it?
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.